not lo pitmato. If the pitum of the etrog was removed, right? We all know the pitum is that top top of the etrog, but there's something called the shoshanta, something called the crown. We're not talking about that little crown that's on top of the pitum. Talking about the wood piece itself. Um, that's what we're referring to. So, so what's the halacha if the pitum was taken off? What did the Mishnah state? The Mishnah stated that if the pitum was removed, the Mishnah says, not lo nitmato, pitmato. If the pitum was removed, it is invalid. We know that there are etrogim that grow without a pitum. If it grows without a pitum, it's not a problem. What's that? Okay, so I'm not. Could be, and there are many etrogim that grow without a pitum, and those that grow without a pitum are not fine. Not considered a problem. It's not considered a chesaron. Not considered. Some understand what's the problem with with missing a pitum. Some understand it's like missing something, right? So it's missing something, but that's only if it's normal to have something, and then as a result, something happens and you don't have it anymore. But if it's not normal for it to have it, it's not called missing. Missing is only when something is supposed to be there.
The natural thing is for them to have the
Most things it's natural to have a pitum, but there are some that naturally grow that the pitum doesn't, there's no pitum over there, or falls off, or falls off during its growth. That's the way. If you look at the Mishnah on 34b, you look at the Mishnah by Nutla Pitmato, 34b, right? But if you look at the Mishnah 34b, 3, right? So, right, so you see the last statement is the nitla pitmato. See the last, is that pitum was removed? See that last statement? See, one second. 34b, sorry, look at 34b3, the last line. If the pitum was removed, right? See it? Right. So what does it say in the bottom? It says, so it says, right. Right. Right.
The short stem is referred to as a dot in the book.
Right. So now if you look at the end of the page, if the pitum was removed, the esrog is invalid because it is chaser. It's missing something, right? Now, but that's the Magen Avram's understanding. Now, however, 34b4, this applies only to an esrog that had a pitum originally. If the esrog grew without a pitum, it came off as part of its natural growth. But I just want to show you. See, that's okay. It came off as natural growth process. See that? You see that, Adam? So it seems that it grew. It had it, but it's part of it grow. Its growth. It doesn't remain. It doesn't stay on. That is, and as often is the case, it's not deficient. See, it's not called missing something if that's the way. If it normally comes off that way, like we said, yeah, we said if something is missing, if it's supposed to be there, it was there, and then it's not there anymore but something that naturally doesn't go there or comes off, that's not called you're missing anything. That's the normal, right? Okay. So look on that next page. Look at page. I just read to you. You hear what? Again, look back again on that page. Look at 34B4 on the top. You have 34B4?
Oh, around.
No, at the note. However, this applies only. Oh, you have a different, yeah.
If it-
At the group was adequate, then.
I don't know.
Oh, you know what? You have a different,
No.
you have different notes. This is a different, edition. Yeah, that's, in this edition,
No.
no, they wanted to put it to clarify it.
Even grew it. and
It
then-
came off as part of its natural growth process. Okay? So now this in Shulchan Aruch, if we look at the Shulchan Aruch, when it talks about the Pittim, so let's take a look in the, let's learn the Gemara first, then we'll get to the Shulchan Aruch. So what does the Gemara say here? Now back to 35b, B3, and the bottom, 35b, Tana Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar nitla buchnoto. It's buchnoto, it was removed. The buchnoto, according to Rashi, refers to this pittum. There's different opinions exactly what is this buchnoto referring to? Is it referring to the stem? And there's two parts to the stem. There's the stem, Mr. Haber, by the way, that the coffee has arrived, by the way. The there's the inside. He likes with a little milk.
No sugar, all right?
Morning, Michael.
Morning, Rabbi.
It's good to see you. We are on 35B, 35B3. We're talking about the pittim, where the pittim of the etrog was removed. And we're saying that, we just said there's difference between an etrog that grew with a pittim or etrog that grew without a pittim. We're talking about an etrog. Our Mishnah is talking about the etrog that grew with a pittim. And if the etrog grew with a pittim, and then it was removed, then the Mishnah states that it's not kosher. And there's a machloket. What is this referring to? Thank you very much. This pittim, this pitmoto, if the pittim was removed. So Rashi says it's referring to what we refer to as the pittim, that wooden stick-like thing that comes out of the top of the etrog. If that was removed, that would invalidate the etrog. But there are others that have a different explanation. That the Mishnah stated that if the stem, the place where you cut the etrog from the tree, if that was removed, it would be, the Mishnah says it would be kosher. The etrog will still be kosher. But some explain that's only the part of the stem that's outside the etrog. But there's a part of the stem that goes inside the etrog, which if you would remove that part of that stem that's inside the etrog, there'll be like a hole in the etrog, because there'll be a little hole on the etrog, because some of the stem goes inside the etrog. So that's what some explain. That is what the Mishnah is referring to. Some Rishonim say that when the Mishnah says when the pittim comes off, it's referring to that part that's within that, the part of the stem that goes inside the etrog, that would invalidate the etrog. So if you look at, but the part of the stem that's outside the etrog, that will not invalidate the etrog. If you look at the Shulchan Aruch on these halachot, 648:21. Let's see what it says over here. That's the Mishnah Berurah. No. I'm just looking at the Shulchan Aruch, the Siman Tov Reish Mem Chet, where the Shulchan Aruch said that if the top of the etrog, which we refer to as the pittim, we call the pittim, was removed, it said that would invalidate the etrog. What does the Mishnah Berurah say? And the Chafetz Chaim says that is because it's chaser, it's missing. It's missing. The etrog is missing something because the pitum was removed. That's a problem of chaser. Okay. Like we said, if it never, the Ramah says, good morning, Mark. The Ramah says if it never, if the etrog never had a pitam, so that's not a problem. Okay, so now the Gemara continues. Niklaf. The Mishnah stated that if an etrog was peeled, the etrog is invalid. Let's say you have this the outer skin of the etrog, all the top of the the total outer skin, the colorful, the glossy, what do you call it? The glossy, whatever part of that skin, if that becomes peeled, that will invalidate the etrog. Now, the Mishnah stated if something is missing from the etrog itself, any amount of the etrog is missing would invalidate the etrog. But this is not considered missing because this is, let's say, this outer peel, this glossy outer peel, and it's not. We don't look at it like the etrog itself is missing something, but rather the invalidation over here is because the peel was this peel was removed from the etrog. So this is the new invalidation. And again, in halacha we would have to look, does this invalidate it just for the first day, or does it invalidate throughout the Yom Tov? There's a lot of discussions of which invalidations would invalidate it just for the first day, because we have certain things that we are more strict on the first day than the rest of the holiday. So here we're discussing one in Ralph. So here we're discussing the peeling of the etrog. So if the etrog was peeled, the Mishnah stated that it is invalid. So now the Gemara says, Amar Rava. So Rava says the following. Hai etrogad iglid kahina sumka kashera. So he says, he makes a statement, Rava makes an independent statement that if you have an etrog and it was peeled, and as a result of the peeling, morning, we are on 35b4. As a result of the peeling, the etrog now, the color changed, it became reddish. It became a reddish color, like a date, like a red date. That dark color, and yet Rava says the etrog is still kosher. As a result of the removal of this glossy peel, the outside of the etrog became reddish, which happens when you peel the fruit a little bit, it oxidizes it, and then as a result of that, it becomes reddish, browns or whatever that color gets dark, and you ever see an apple, right? Apple, it's very common with the apple. When you bite into an apple, if you leave it out a little bit, you see the color change, right, Michael? So here we had the guy peeled the outside layer of the etrog, and Rava says it's kosher. Rava says that this etrog is still kosher. So the Gemara challenges Rava. So how could Rava say that if you peel, right, Mr. Haber, he peeled the outside glossy layer of the etrog, that Rava says it's kosher, vatnan. We learned in the Mishnah, niklaf pasul. We learned of the Mishnah that if it was niklaf, that if it was peeled, it is pasul. It is invalid. So how could Rava say that the peeled etrog is valid? So the Gemara says, lo kasha. No, it's not a contradiction. Why not? Habikula, habimiksata. It depends how much was peeled. Was the whole thing peeled or part of it peeled? Now, you would say without looking at the Rashi, you would say, if the whole thing was peeled, so then it's no good. But if part of it was peeled, so then you would say maybe it would regenerate, and maybe the peel will come back, and it wouldn't be a problem, right? That's maybe how you might say. You would say if the whole thing came off, the whole peel came off, that's maybe it's not beautiful anymore. It lost its beauty, it lost its hadar because it has a total different color. But if it's the only partial peel, you would say it would be kosher. That is how and that would be a great question. Exactly how much would that partial be for it to be kosher? Yes. Yeah, we're just talking about this glossy outside. The glossy. This is the glossy outside. It's not a peel like a peel of an orange, where it's a thick peel, which is totally independent. This is this outside glossy peel of the estrog. You take an etrog. There's no peel of an orange, right? But this is that glossy outside peel. So that if a certain amount of that peel is peeled, it could grow or
It's the pigmented part. The pigmented part is very thin, and there's the pigmented part. If you peel it, that's protecting the pigment. It'll start to shiny. Yeah, the shiny part is that. So it's like a waxy, pigmented, shiny. I think if you read the notes, he's saying if you peel the whole thing, then it'll turn white, but then it'll turn brown, and so at least it'll be a uniform color, and so at least it'll be okay there.
yeah, but that's Rashi's explanation. Rashi takes a different approach. Rashi says that when the whole thing is peeled, it's fine. Why? Because it stays that one color. It might have turned a reddish color, but it's not multicolored. But when something is different, when it looks different colors, when it's not one uniform color, that's a lack of beauty. If you would have the yellow and then you would have the red, yes, but yeah, I don't know why the guy, I don't know. Yeah, I don't
Rabbi,
know.
look at Daf 34B4.
Yeah, well, what did it say, Michael?
It has a whole picture. Look at and it talks about that it's not beauty, but it's lacking. If the peel or the outer rind or the inner rind is missing anything.
Right, because if it's missing in the inner rind, it should be a problem of missing. It should be an independent issue. Here we're talking about the outer. Here we're talking about the skin.
Read the note. Look at the note.
Yeah, no, which one? 34 what?
34B4.
34B4.
The whole diagram.
Which
right above, right next to the box of the diagram. 34.
Yeah.
No, 34.
Right.
It tells you to go to that in the on where we are right now.
But here we're talking about that glossy skin.
It says that. Read it.
Right, exactly. That's what we're talking about. The glossy.
It's telling us to go back to this note.
Right. Okay. Very good. Like we're saying, like exactly what we're saying. Only if it's on anything on the inside, in the inner, that's missing, that's a different issue. But even any amount. Here we're talking about the glossy peel. So Rashi says the glossy peel only if the whole glossy peel remains intact, the whole thing was peeled, that would be kosher because it has one color. But if part of it was peeled, then now you have different colors. You have a reddish color, you have a yellow color, and that is considered like spotted. It's a spotted estrog, and a spotted estrog is no good. Yes.
The first part is that exact outer peel. You see people on like a salad or like when they're cooking, they take like a little, like almost like a sanding paper, and then like grind it so that the zest of the lemon falls out. So the outside, the yellow part or the green part is edible, and the juice is edible. So the white part is not edible. So he's saying that if you remove the outer.
Here was over. Here was over. This is the outer collapsing. Right, but here it's all about the beauty. Here the issue is beauty. So etrog is a total different issue that we're focusing on, and that seems to be the question: what is the thing that will remove the beauty of an etrog? Is it having part of the outside of the etrog removed, and now you have a reddish part is red and part is yellow, or is it if only if the whole thing is totally removed, is it a problem?
Side etrog's green and yellow.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So green and yellow, it's maybe that's the natural colors. But because it's the natural colors, we don't look at it that it's deficient. That's how it grows naturally. But here, when you went ahead and you peeled it, this is not the natural way that it grows. Because they have yellow in it. Because we learned about the fact that it's important to have, when you buy an etrog, try to make sure you see some yellow in the etrog. We spoke about that. Okay, nitzak nikab. So the Mishnah stated if the etrog has a hole in the etrog, the Mishnah stated depends. Did that hole, was anything missing from the etrog, or was it a hole that nothing was missing? Let's say if you took a needle and you stuck it into an etrog, and nothing was removed from the etrog, we said that it's kosher. That's the Mishnah stated. If it has a hole, only problem if it has a hole. Good morning, Mark. If it has a hole, and also something is missing from the etrog. That's what the Mishnah stated. A hole by itself would not be a problem. If you come off the Mishnah, that's what the Mishnah said. Based on that, you might have thought, even if the hole goes, you send a hole right through the etrog. You have, let's say, a needle, and you stuck the needle, let's say you had a long needle, and it went right through the etrog. What will be the halachic status of that etrog that the needle went through, right? So you would have said, based on the Mishnah, you would have thought that as long as no piece of the etrog is missing, you're good, right? That's what you would have thought. Comes the Gemara and says no. Tani Ula Bar Chanina. Ula Bar Chanina says, Nikav nekev mefulash b'mashu. If the hole, and we spoke about this Gemara earlier, if the hole goes through the etrog, if this is the etrog, and the hole goes through from one end to the other, that would invalidate the etrog b'mashu. It doesn't make a difference what the size of that hole. You had a very thin needle that goes through, but if it goes through and through, and that would invalidate the etrog. V'she'ena mefulash, but if it doesn't go through and through, so then it depends how wide is this hole. Because if it's the size of a coin, it is a certain coin, let's say a quarter, whatever the size of that. If you make that type of whatever that coin is, that would go ahead and invalidate the etrog. Now, remember we spoke about smaller hole should not invalidate the etrog as long as it's smaller than that coin. Right. But that's only if the hole doesn't go, again, if the hole goes through and through.
No, the notes say actually there's an opinion that it doesn't have to go all the way through, but it has to go through the rind. Meaning the thick white part, if it goes to the air, if it goes all the way to the area where the seeds, that also
okay, but the Rashi says mitzido letzido. Yeah, but it still went very deep.
Yeah, very deep.
Okay, but the language in mefulash, Mori Mara, you see, it says the language in mefulash, it goes. But look at note number 2. You see note number 2? The hole passes through the esrog from one side to the other. Tosfos states that it's necessary for the hole to go through to the other side only if it does not penetrate the core where the seeds reside. If the hole goes through the rind, the core, that's it deemed to be entirely through, even though it's not come out other side. But again, Well, if it hits the seeds, that's enough. But again, it's not clear, meaning there's two opinions on the matter. All the right, because the basic translation of mefulash is it goes through and through. Okay, so we have that's the basic translation. This is the chidush, is to say that it doesn't have to go through and through. If you recall, we Aramaic. We have 36a 1. Remember, we had the story. What do you do if the Mishnah states if an etrog is dry, it's not kosher. How do you test if an etrog is dry? So we say you take a needle and you put it through. So the question they ask is, how could you put a needle through? We just said that if you put something through and through, it invalidates the etrog. So one of the answers that we gave is the following. If you go through and through, that you go through the center that you hit the seed and you go through the center, that would invalidate it. But if you want to see if the etrog is moist or not, if you go and you put it through the side wall of the etrog, that would also be able to see the test if the etrog, if it's moist or not. And therefore, we don't have to, you would not be able to test by going through. But that would, if you would test it by putting the needle through the center of the etrog, that would invalidate the etrog because you went. What'd you say? Or maybe you could do it on the bottom, but then you might. If you do on the bottom, depends how you do it on the bottom. Did you go through and through? You didn't go through and through. What? Oh, not through and through. Oh, okay. So it says there are different explanations with the seed. Right. So the commentaries are trying to. Good morning. Good to see you. If you want a Gemara, you can do it old fashioned, whatever you want. The commentators are trying to understand exactly how you can do it. What is the proper way to test the etrog that it's moist, but not ruining through the test. So right, exactly. So some have different. Some say go this way instead of going that way. Different explanation. What do you say? Exactly. That's how some explain. That's how you'll be able to verify that whether there's moistness or not. Okay. Now the Gemara brings the following question. Boy Rava. Rava asked the following question. No do be'etrog simoni treifa. The etrog there's certain signs of the etrog that are similar to certain issues when it comes to an animal. An animal, the Torah says you can't eat a treifa. What's a treifa? An animal has some sort of internal wound that the famous cases, the classic case is a hole in its lung. If an animal has a hole in its lung, a nail, the animal swallowed a nail, right? So you don't you don't want to keep nails around where you keep your animals, because if it swallows a nail, not a fingernail, the nail that you put into the wall, that might puncture its lung, and a puncturing of its lung, even though the animal's alive, but it's going to die. And we checked, and there's certain things that we check. The one who slaughters the animal checks to see that there's certain that the animal did not have this problem. So now, what do you say? So now the etrog, want to say something? So now the etrog has something which is connected to the treifa family, something similar, an issue that you would discuss when it comes to an animal. And this etrog, now we're talking about etrog, has something of similarity to that. And we want to know what's the status of the etrog. That's what we're focusing on. Is this etrog, by the fact that it has this thing that happened to it, would that invalidate the etrog or not invalidate? So what's the case of the Gemara? That the Gemara says that what was the case? So the Gemara says like this. So the Gemara first wants to know, Rava makes a general statement, a very vague statement. He didn't identify what happened to the etrog. He just says, you know what happened to the etrog? If something happened to the etrog, that if it would happen to an animal, the animal might become a treifa. What is the din if would that same thing happen to an etrog? Would that invalidate the etrog? So the Gemara says, what case is Rava talking about? Rava did not explain what happened to the etrog. He just says, you know what? If something happened to the etrog that if what happened to an animal, it would invalidate the animal. So the Gemara says, what happened? So the Gemara starts, making suggestions. My come boiling. What's the issue? What is the case that Rav is talking about? So he says, Niklav, if the case is that Rav has a question, we have a halach of an animal. If you take an animal and you skin the animal while the animal's alive, you cut off the skin of the animal. It's very painful, of course, and of course it's sar balechayim. You can't cause needless pain. Good morning to an animal. Good morning. Okay, tough. Thank you. And if you skin the animal's skin, we know tanina, and we know what's the halacha if you skin an animal while it's alive, that it will invalidate the animal. That animal's going to die if you skin obviously a small amount of skin that will not kill the animal, but there's a certain amount of skin. If you go ahead and you skin the animal, it will make the animal die as a result of that type of wound. So there needs the skin to live, protection to live. So Tanina, we learned about that by etrog. If you skin the etrog, we said if you peel the etrog, it's invalid. No, we said it depends. Remember, we said how much skin. The Mishnah, we said it's kosher, but the Mishnah, look at the Rava said it's kosher, but the Mishnah said it's not kosher, right? So we said if you skin the animal, so you can't tell me the question of Rava is what's the law if you skin an etrog, because that we already know. Rava is not coming to tell us something that we don't already know. So if we know it already, it's obvious. He's not asking that question. So if he's talking about the case that this etrog was skinned, tanina, we learned it. In its stock, what about the windpipe of the animal? Let's say it gets a crack. All to the length of the windpipe, there's a crack in the windpipe all along the length of the windpipe. So we know the halacha over there is also clear. If there's a hole going according to the length of the windpipe, it would also ruin the windpipe. It would ruin the animal. The animal's going to die if it has all along the windpipe from top to bottom. It's cracked. And the Mishnah stated, and the Mishnah said that Tanina, the Mishnah said if you have an etrog that's cracked, right, even though there's nothing missing in the etrog is invalid. So what's the case? Now, in Nikav, maybe the case is that it got a hole, meaning, and we know when it comes to treifa, if an animal gets, if it gets a hole in the membrane of the brain of the animal, the animal would be considered is going to die as a result of that hole, and we say that that's invalid by an animal. So what's the halacha if the etrog gets a hole? Well, we know the Mishnah says what the law is by a hole of an etrog. The Mishnah says as long as no part of the etrog was missing as a result of the hole, it's kosher. Haritanina, we learned it. Okay, as long as you didn't go through and through, whatever. But we said already what the law is. Good morning, if there's a hole in the etrog. So what is the case that Rava is talking about? That there's a case of the etrog that has something that's similar, that is similar to a treifa. That something would, if this would happen, what happened to the etrog, what happened in an animal, maybe the animal would be not kosher, would be a treifa. What's the status of the etrog? But the Gemara is trying to figure out what is this case that Rava has a question about? Because if it's the case that there's a hole in the etrog, similar to a hole in the animal, we already know the law. So Rava wanted to ask the question, what's the law? If it's a case where the etrog got a crack, like if the animal gets a crack in its lung, we already know what in its windpipe, we already know what the law is, but if it has a crack. Right, the whole right. But we learned, but we've learned it. We've learned the law. So Rava can't be asking. Rava is a later rabbi. He's coming to tell us something new. So what is the case? We're in search, Mr. Haber, for the case of Rava's question that has not been dealt with yet, and that the Rav is bringing up. Is that clear? Rav is bringing up. There's a question that he wants to figure out, but we that hasn't been already taught. So now the Gemara answers the question. Comes the Gemara and says, "Here's the following case. We need some biologists for this case. He come a boile. Is the Ula of Rabbi Yochanan, like Ula in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. What was the case? Reya shenishbecha kiton. If the lung, the lung has certain type of. If you look at a number 8 on the bottom, the lung is composed as the bronchial tubes and has the ear cells. It has the flesh. There's a lot going on in the lung. You have the tubes that run into the lung, and but now there's the flesh over there by the lung, and if the flesh, let's say some of the meat the morning dissolved, but the membrane remained intact, we say if the fact that some of that meat that's over there dissolved, it became liquidy, it's still, but if the bronchial tubes are intact, that meat that got dissolved is not a problem. It's not going to make the animal treifa. The animal's not going to die as a result of this. Some of that flesh that's over there by the lung that got dissolved. As long as the bag of the lung is still intact, the lung itself is intact, the tubes are intact. And so we say, yes, you're missing some of the meat that's there. You're still good. You're still good. The animal is still good. It's missing some of the protection. Still good. And V'amar Rava, who the kaima symphonia. Rava says, as long as there's the bronchial tubes that are still intact, that run into the lung, some of the meat has been dissolved. Good morning, David. Great to see you. So the animal is still, it's not a treifa. Not going right. It's not fatal. Right, but it's not going to die as a result. Like, right, what is a treifa? Remember, a treifa is an animal that's going to die within the year because it has some sort of internal problem. It's a whole this thing exactly. It's like some. It's still able to hold the ear exactly. Right. No, the meat that the flesh dissolved like if you could even pour it. I mean, that's what it means. It's liquid. That's all it means. Pour like a flask means that the flesh that's inside the lung dissolved. That's now, but now the flesh is like fluid. So if you would turn the lung upside down, it's like a liquid would come out. So now the Gemara's question is, Hachamai, what is the case? What is the law regarding the etrog? So what's the story? So you look at note number 10. How do you compare it to the etrog? So that's where number 10 comes in. Footnote number 10. The etrog, we said, has that glossy outer skin, right? That glossy outer skin, and then it has a thin outer rind, and then it has a thick inner part of the etrog, that big, a lot of white in the etrog. Inside that, and inside, all the way inside, a small compartment of seeds, where the etrog seeds are contained, all the way in the middle of the etrog. So the seeds are enclosed in small pockets. It has small pockets. So when the outer rind and the compartments enclosing the seeds are intact, so you have the outer rind of the etrog is intact, the pockets that the seeds are sitting in, those pockets are intact, but the flesh in between. So you have something in between the pockets where the seeds of the etrog are, and then there's some flesh, there's some meat, there's something of the etrog, there's something that's in between, right outside those pockets, and that flesh dissolved. So on top of it is good, inside is good, but there's something in between. all right, and now, so if that has dissolved, good morning, Gary. If that has dissolved, what do we say regarding this etrog? Now, I asked somebody, he says, how are you going to be able to see what happened? You want to know if it's kosher, the etrog. So he said, if you would move the etrog, you would feel this movement inside the etrog, because it's like liquidy. That's the question. Is that etrog good or not? To be continued tomorrow. We should have a beautiful prayer today. Think about it the whole day. Think about this etrog. Think about the animal that has a hole in its lung. Think about the laws of Torah. That's what you think about when you're walking in the street. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Thank you, Michael. Great to see you. Tell Jaime that we missed him. Michael, you got to tell Jaime that we missed him.
I leave the class.
Thank you. Thank you very much.